So that's where we're going to pick up the scripture this morning. Matthew is going to give us the account that we're going to read this morning is from Matthew. Matthew writes it down. Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 36. Matthew tells us that Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane, and he said, "Sit here while I go and pray." And then we're told that Jesus specifically takes Peter, James, and John, the Zebedee's two sons, James and John, and we're told that Jesus becomes anguished and distressed, as I just said. I mean, Jesus to this point has apparently remained somewhat composed, somewhat. Even though it was probably obvious that there was something going on, Jesus to this point has remained composed. But in this moment, at this moment in history, at this time, at this location, the weight of what is about to happen to Jesus washes over him, and he becomes anguished and distressed. Verse 38, he tells them, says, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. So stay here with me and keep watch." Stay here with me. Guys, I'm crushed. Peter's fearless and unshakable leader, the one that he has professed to be the Son of God, the one that Peter has locked arms with and said, I'm with you. He's anguished. He's distressed. His soul is crushed. And Peter's seeing all of this. And Jesus says, I have to go and I got to pray. And guys, I need you to pray with me. I'm struggling. I need my community around me, you know. Verse 39 says that Jesus went on a little farther and he bowed with his face to the ground and he prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me." If it's possible, I don't want to do this, you know. If it's possible, but I want your will to be done and not mine. Then he returns to the disciples, and we're told that he finds his disciples. He finds specifically the three, Peter, James, and John. He finds them asleep. And he's asked them to pray. He's asked them to pray for him, to pray for themselves, which we're going to find out in just a moment. And they're asleep. And he says to Peter, "Couldn't you watch with me 1 hour? Couldn't you stay with me for 1 hour? I need you, man. My willpower's low. I'm in danger of my emotions taking control of me. Couldn't you stay with me for an hour?" Now, I think there's a very interesting dynamic that is happening specifically between Jesus and Peter. You have Jesus over here. He's crushed with grief to the point of death. And in this moment, Jesus is in need of his community. He's in need of his friends. He's in need of his followers to pray along with him and to pray for him. Jesus has a need in his humanity in this moment. Jesus recognizes something about himself in this moment. Jesus recognizes his willpower is exhausted. It's gone. He's just as physically tired, stressed as Peter. His willpower is low, but Jesus recognizes it. And for Jesus, the answer is communication with the Father. Jesus prays. And not only that, don't miss this. Jesus asks his community to pray along with him, his followers to pray along with him. Because it's a whole lot easier to do in a group, in a community. It's just a lot easier. Jesus recognizes that. So don't miss this. Jesus recognized his willpower was low, and so he prayed. So I would ask this question. Are you, right now in this moment, in this season in your life, are you weak? Pray. Are you tired? Pray. Are you spent? Pray. Are you exhausted? Pray. Do you need strengthening? Pray. That's what Jesus did. I mean, we see it very clearly. That's what Jesus did. He prayed. Jesus is hours from a death that in no way can I sufficiently communicate with words. I can't communicate what is about to happen. I can't sufficiently and adequately describe it. And Jesus, in this moment, he needs strength to complete his mission. And he prayed. And he asked his community to pray along with him. Not just him by himself, Jesus and God in this vertical shaft of worship, but Jesus and God, and then also, I need my community right there with me, praying for me. Peter, James, John, I need you. And this is, to me, another interesting element. Not just because Jesus needed strengthening. He did. But not just for that reason. Jesus also knows what is coming for his followers. Jesus is also aware of what is to come and what the next few hours hold, not only for himself, but for Peter specifically. Say, how do you know that? Can you prove that? I can. Verse 41. Jesus says, keep watch and pray so that you, Peter, James, John, keep watch and pray so that you won't fall into temptation. Jesus knows that the next few hours, he knows what they hold not just for himself, but also for his followers. And he says, you guys need to be prayed up too. You guys need to get your willpower up too, because right now you ain't going to make it. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak, is what Jesus says. But here we have Peter, a lot like me, you know. I relate to Peter probably more than any other of the apostles, especially in this season of his life. Here we have Peter. He is physically and emotionally exhausted. It's understandable. It's been an intense night. It's getting late. He's tired. We have Peter, whose willpower is depleted, and he falls asleep instead of doing what Jesus has asked him to do. He falls asleep. See, the willpower of Peter, it's gone. It's been spent. It's been used up. Nothing left. 3 times, in fact, Jesus will request for prayer and support and strengthening. 3 different times, and 3 different times, Peter falls asleep. He's out. He's done. Now, I have no doubt that Peter and the other apostles, they wanted to do the next right thing. I have no doubt that they wanted to do the next right thing. Just like I have no doubt that many in this room, watching online, myself as well, I want to do the next right thing. I do. They didn't have the willpower left to do it. It has gone. And they did not do what Jesus did to replenish that willpower. While Jesus prayed, Peter slept. And through the communication that Jesus had with the Father, something amazing happens. Jesus gains the willpower, the strength, the ability to do the next right thing. Jesus is now ready to complete the mission that he has been sent to this earth to complete. He's ready. Peter didn't. Peter slept. Peter went to sleep. And the rest of Peter's story on this night will turn out to be his life's greatest shame, I would have to believe. And I do the same thing. We often do the same thing. We use up our willpower during the day, and it gets low, and we know it's getting low very often. We know it's getting depleted. We know we're tired. We know we're angry. We know we're frustrated. We know we're stressed. We know, whatever it is for you. We know that we're on the edge. We know that we are in danger of our emotions taking over. We know we are in danger of being controlled by emotions and saying things and doing things and reacting ways that we know we shouldn't do. But even though we recognize that about ourselves, I don't do anything. I just kind of let it ride. Let it ride. I kind of sometimes even enjoy the ride because I'm vindicated. I'm tired. I'm just tired. I do that. I do nothing. Because when our willpower is low, our emotions control. And once again, I become my own worst enemy. But here's something that's interesting. None of this surprises God. None of this that we've talked about surprises God. He created us. He created the way our bodies and our minds work. He designed how they function. So none of this is a surprise to God, but I'd like you to lean in for just a second because I think this is an interesting perspective. I'd like you to lean into this. He not only knows this because he created us. He knows from experience. He knows from his experience. Because he actually put one of these bodies on himself as Jesus. God knows all about our emotions. God knows all about our willpower. He knows all about our struggle with temptation. Because God, the Creator, he designed the bodies and the brains. Of course he did. But Jesus actually put one on. So with that in mind, I'd like you to consider, just for a moment, a little bit of human physiology. You're probably thinking, wait a second, I didn't know I was coming to science class. Well, you did. A little human physiology here for just a second. There are 2 significant parts of your and my brain, our brains, that deal with decision making. 2 specific parts. The first part of the brain that deals with decision making, we're just going to call it the Homer Simpson part of the brain. Okay? This is the Homer Simpson part of the brain. The Homer Simpson part of the brain, that part of the brain that makes decisions, that's where the reward structure is located. Okay, you can take Homer down, McKinley. Put him back up if you want to at any time, though. That's where the reward structure is located in the decision-making part of your brain. It's located real deep inside of your brain. In fact, You don't have to do this. If you want to, that's fine. If you thought about your brain and your whole central nervous system, like if you take your hand and you thought about this part of your arm being your brain